Well, the picture is a developing one. We are hearing about clashes and fighting between pro-Gaddafi fighters and those supporting this popular revolutionary committee in and around towns close to Tripoli, on the way from this border to Tripoli. It's Zawiya and Zuwaira. Now, a lot of the people that we've got this information from are people who've been in their homes for days, unable to come out because of the fear of the violence. So they've told us they've managed to come out, they've managed to make it here, many of them paying lots of money to Libyans to bring them to this border, and they've spoken of violent scenes along the way.
Yeah, Nazanin, I just want to talk to you about the area around Zawiya and Zuwaira. Zawiya is where we think Gaddafi is going to go to make his address on television, to talk to the people there. But suggestions, according to the Reuters news agency just this moment, of heavy gunfire. What do you know about the troop movements in and around there, if anything?
Well, that doesn't really surprise me at all. We had a British official here who was waiting for some British people to come across his border, coming along that very road, and it was so dangerous they had to turn back. What we're hearing, and again, these are just unconfirmed reports, these are what people here are telling us, people who've been on the road, is that these two towns are surrounded now by military who are loyal to Gaddafi, and they're telling us that the towns are actually in the control of the people. So they're being surrounded, and there is fighting going on right now. How bloody that fighting is, what is happening on the ground, it's very difficult to say right now, but these are the reports that we're getting here on the border.
And if Gaddafi himself is feeling a little bit isolated, it won't have been helped by the fact that one of those in his innermost circle has decided he's had enough.
Yes, we understand that his cousin, Ahmed Gaddafi al-Dam, has actually defected to Cairo, protesting, he says, at the regime's fierce crackdown in the last few days. He actually said that he couldn't take the grave violations to human rights and human and international laws. Just another in a wave of defections that we've seen in the past few days, putting even more pressure on Gaddafi and his regime.
If there was one group, Naz, that we hadn't heard from and perhaps wondered when we would, it was the Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, and they now say they're throwing their support behind the protesters.
Yeah, they've come out with a statement which is really interesting, because not only are they supporting what they call the Libyans who are fighting against Gaddafi, they're also calling him a criminal tyrant. And they're calling on Tunisians, Egyptians and Algerians to help in the revolt, to actually go to Libya and help in this revolution.
Nazanin, thank you very much indeed. That's Nazanin Moshiri on the west edge of Libya, in Tunisia, on the border between the two countries. We now go to the other side of Libya. Thousands of Libyans themselves have been flocking to the border with Egypt. And Jamal Al-Shayal joins us from Saloum. That is on the border crossing. We can see it right behind you. Jamal, what have you heard from those people coming out, and indeed those people trying to get in to bring in medical supplies and other essentials for those people trapped inside?
Well, David, the stories of horror and the stories of death continue as long as the people coming out of this border crossing behind me continue to flood it. There has been a slowing down in terms of the traffic, and I assume that is because the Egyptian authorities here are trying to get a hold of some sort of grasp and try and bring some sort of order and control to a border crossing which has been largely chaotic in the past 48 hours. However, there is still a steady stream of people. As for those who are trying to get in, it is a message of defiance and hope and support. They are humanitarian workers, they are the Red Crescent, and they are journalists, all of them determined to try and either bring a picture to the world of what is taking place inside Libya, or it is an attempt to try and bring much needed supplies. Interestingly enough, I've been told that it's not only medicine that is required, but just simple essentials like food and water, because a lot of these products apparently are imported by Libya, and now that the East is in the hands of opponents of Gaddafi, that stream of, or that supply of food has been cut off largely from huge civilian areas in Benghazi, which has a population of over 1 million people, and to Al Bayda, Ghouta and other places. So there has been a call from those inside Libya for just basic supplies of food and water and other essentials, David.
And what about the difficulty, the physical difficulty for those inside Libya trying to get out of making the journey to where you are through what are effectively battlefield conditions?
Essentially, that is the situation. It is a battlefield, and that's what they're telling me. A lot of them are very disappointed, particularly the Egyptians who make it through, that they've had to brave these conditions on the road 3 or 4 days, not knowing whether they'll be able to get here alive. And it's only when they get here that they're greeted by some sort of transportation to take them to their homes. There is a medical center here, a mobile hospital set up by the Egyptian authorities. However, a lot of them complain that this is too little because some people are getting injured or even killed, according to some people, just trying to get here. So the danger in trying to escape, it's not merely those who have made it across the border that gives you a sense of that things are okay. In fact, there are a lot more stranded inside. There's up to 1 million Egyptians who live inside Libya. So if we were to look at the numbers, just over 20,000 Egyptians have made it through this border in the past 2 days. That gives you an idea of just how many still remain inside Libya.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's Jamal Al-Shayal on the eastern edge of the country, on the Libyan-Egyptian border. The situation inside Libya is forcing thousands of foreign workers, as we've heard, to flee, not all of them making it to those crossings. James Bays spoke to some who gave a harrowing account of the events in the capital of Libya, Tripoli.
The approach to Tripoli airport. From the sky, the area around the city looks deceptively calm, but witnesses tell us there are checkpoints on the road and panic and fear among the population. Tripoli remains off limits to international media, with foreign journalists denied visas. We touched down in Libya, arriving in transit, spending over 17 hours at the airport. It's a place of chaos. Some passengers have now spent more than 3 days here, hoping to flee the violence and turmoil. Around the airport, television screens have the state TV blaring. A constant stream of Gaddafi propaganda with pictures of demonstrations in support of the Libyan leader. For now, it's clear this airport and the capital city are pretty firmly under his control. One oil worker who didn't want to have his face filmed until he got on his flight, but who's worked in Libya for 18 years, says the last few days have been most unnerving.
We're trying to get in the terminal building, and maybe 5,000 people out there, and we had a very difficult time pushing and shoving. We're just about at the doors, and we got beaten back. I don't know, military people, it's batons.
We're now on board an evacuation flight arranged by the British government. When we were on the ground in Tripoli, it was only possible to film using a high-quality mobile phone. It wasn't possible to get the camera out because there were too many security personnel around and people were reluctant to talk to us. Now they're on board this flight, they are at last able to tell us what they saw.
The police officers ran down the Mesran street and they opened fire on the boys who had no weapons at all. We were on the roof, my colleagues and myself. They saw us on the roof and